In this video, iconic filmmaker and queer majority guest editor Bruce LaBruce sits down in conversation with the award-winning Brazilian director Gustavo Vinagre. They discuss the blurred line between erotic art films and pornography, the filmmaking process, why directors sometimes perform their own work, the importance of the anus in queer erotica, and more.
Gustavo, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
So you're in Rio?
I'm in São Paulo.
Are you in Sao Paulo? So you live in Sao Paulo?
Yes, I live in São Paulo.
Oh, okay, cool. Have you always lived in Sao Paulo or have you lived in Rio?
I lived in Rio till I was like 11 years old. I was born there, and then I moved to the countryside of São Paulo, and then to São Paulo when I came to college.
So I've been watching your films again. I've seen some of them and I watched some for the first time. What, for queer majority, I was writing about the difference between porn for the piece I wrote. I was writing about the difference between porn or the distinction between porn and art, or is there a distinction, or should there be a distinction, or what is the definition of pornography? How do you feel about that? Because your work has a lot of pornographic content, obviously, but it's very different from any other porn that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's so hard to answer. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I've shown my work also at porn websites, so I guess I could call them porn in a way. I think maybe I think what defines if a film is a film and not TV is actually the media where the the piece is showing. So I guess when I'm at a film festival showing my films at a big screen, I guess that could be called like a film with sexually explicit content. But if the same film is in a porn website, I guess then we can call it porn. I think that makes it easier
So
to
context, pretty
yeah,
much.
context.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I talk about that in my piece where I can show a photo with a guy with a heart on and publish it in a porn magazine and it's considered porn. And then
mhm.
I frame the same photo and put it in an art gallery and it's considered art. So,
Yes, I think it has lots to do with context actually,
yeah.
because if we look if we compare to the other porns in like in a porn website, people maybe would say it's really different from regular porn, but if it's there, then it's still porn anyway, I guess.
But have you ever considered doing, I'm sure people sometimes complain to you like they do to me. They say, "Oh, it's too arty." It's like, why don't you just, do porn? All the other stuff, the character stuff, poetry, only distracts um, from my enjoyment of the porn. What do you say to those people? Or have you ever considered doing what might be considered more what pure porn?
um I guess I would do porn if I got like paid for it.
Yeah.
Like if there was like good money, maybe I would do porn, but I basically do those films with a very small amount of money, and I do it because I really like believe. I really want to tell those stories, and so I guess I would only do porn if I was like getting paid. I don't think I have pleasure in filming sex and doing explicit things and trying to push the limits, but if you want to push like something, I think you have to deal with. If it's just porn, then it's not that interesting to me, because I feel that what's more interesting is like trying to put something unexpected inside a narrative, like doing something very explicit inside a film that not necessarily needed it, you know? And then because there's like then you can try like the shock, or not that I'm trying to shock people, but it's only like in the friction, I think, uh between art or film and porn. That's where I'm interested more than porn itself.
And no one has ever asked you to make a like a regular porn film, like
No, I never heard those questions. Usually it's more the contrary, like people asking me to do a more safe kind of film. Like, why don't you do like a regular film?
right
It's
without
more,
porn. Yeah.
yeah.
But then within the context of the kind of pornographic imagery that you use, I mean, you do go even farther than a lot of porn goes. I mean, like for example, I guess it's is it unlearning to sleep where you get fisted at the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, that is like, do you find it hard to kind of either like to find places to show that kind of work, or because it is so extremely pornographic, or what people consider, um, extremely pornographic?
Hmm. I think uh, that film is very specific because I shot it during the pandemic. I think there is like several things that made the film not to be as shown as I would like. I think it's because it was during the pandemic. I think it also is read as if there isn't as much production value as it could have because I shot everything on my cell phone, and so it has like this very raw kind of image that a cell phone brings. I think all that, and of course the sex, made the film not to be as shown as I would wish. He was actually he was very little shown, like only at the Berlin Porn Film Festival, where he got like the best film prize.
Yeah. What year was that?
It was 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it was shown at a Brazilian festival, and it was only like online version of that Brazilian festival because it was during the pandemic. So, but I also think that maybe the world got, I don't know, more conservative also because, for example, when I shot Nova Dubai I shot it in 2013, more than 10 years ago, 11 years ago. The film, I thought the film wouldn't be shown anywhere because it was explicit, because it was like a medium length film. It wasn't like a regular, like a feature or a short. It was 15 minutes long. And actually, the film went super well. Like it was released in Rotterdam Film Festival. It was shown at Torino Film Festival. It was like really shown at regular festivals that weren't like porn festivals or queer festivals. And it was shown as a feature, as a short, as a medium length. So back then the film was much more it was much more successful than I would expect. And now I don't know what actually happened with Unlearning to Sleep, if it has to do with the
Well,
world.
unlearning to sleep is very also it's very scatological in general.
Yeah, I think
But
it
it's
has
also
many things that helped the film not being as shown
but it's
as.
also very personal. I mean, it's very and very emotional. I mean, to end up to finish the film like with the your lover's arm up your ass. I mean, this is a very strong statement, you know. Uh, and in fact, a lot of your films end either with begin or end with an asshole
Yes.
somehow. um, uh, so, what is the how can you ex, can you talk a bit about this kind of idea of the asshole and the importance of the anus in your work and how why that is so central, how that relates to, I guess, uh, to homosexuality, maybe to also to HIV, and
Mhm. Well, as I told you, I think I like to show uh, aspects, uh, and actually show like parts of the body that aren't shown usually. Like in the Blue Flower of Novalis, we start with the character's ass like in the sun, and he's like
yeah, close up,
taking he's taking his vitamin D
right?
through the ass.
Which he doesn't even like to do.
Yes, and I think it has to do like with changing changing a bit the hierarchy of the body in the cinema, trying to like the ass is up where the head should be. It's like
Yes,
trying a bit to take the importance of rationality and like the leadership of the head. And I think in Learning to Sleep, we talk about that also with all the characters that are shown in grinder pictures without a head. And when the alien talks about his tattoo that is headless. And so I think it has to do with like trying to uh, put light in parts that we usually don't give importance to, but
or that are shameful, for
are
instance.
shameful, and they are actually like part of our daily life. The S is there all the time, and we are really aware of it. And it's a very like important time of the day when we go to take a shit or things like that. And yeah, I think I just try to make it natural, like being human and having a whole body that isn't just about like our thoughts and our heads and what we say and speak.
Mm, mm. And yet, there's also a lot of poets in your film, and so the idea of what's in the head, poetry, philosophy is also very important to you.
Yeah.
Um,
I was actually a poet when I was a teenager. I that's what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be, and I used to write lots of poems, and that's how I got to know Glauco, the blind poet, and I sent him all my poems.
in your
And
film for a blind poet, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I sent him all my poems, and then back then 2008, 7, he asked me my address, and then he sent me back all his books to my house. and and I study literature in the university, so literature and poetry was always like something that was very inspiring to me, and that I think somewhere in my head that's what I really wanted to do. And then I mean, though my life just changed and shifted into other stuff. But yeah, I'm really interested also in characters that are artists, not only poets, but um, most of my documentary are about people who are really self-aware, and they can repeat. It's, I do documentaries that are very like low budget, and that my first feature I shot in one night. I shot a friend, an actress, Julia, and usually it's like one day, 3 days, 2 days of shooting. It's very simple, and I think I'm really attracted to those characters because they, despite I'm doing a documentary, they are self-aware and they can repeat, and they understand the the ways that I shoot, and the importance to me that I need to make a very short set to fit my budget. So it's
Hmm.
very important to me that I'm dealing, even if it's a documentary, that I'm documenting artists in a way, because then they understand the importance of repeating or making it right. It's not only about expecting the reality to come and to show in front of the camera. It's about recreating that reality with the character.
Right. Like, so the character in um the Blue Flower of Novalis, for example,
Yes.
is a poet.
No, he's actually nothing. Well, that's what he says. I think he has like a very uh, an artist spirit,
Spirit,
but
yeah.
yeah, but he,
But he kind of refuses to
yeah,
produce anything.
yes, exactly, yeah.
So it seems like some of your characters are, they have a very, I mean, in a way, he seems to be kind of in an existential bind of some kind, and the same with the blind poet, who's a, he's an existentialist, but who embraces, you know, his identity as a blind man through
Mhm.
his existential kind of philosophy. Um, but they're quite often very, you know, I guess you would say marginalized characters, but kind of in exile of some kind of exile, or whether it's self-imposed or imposed by others, and um, maybe to the outward viewer they seem very uh, melancholy and kind of uh, very tortured, even in some ways. Do you think, is there a, what attracts you to those kinds of characters?
I think what attracts me is their. I think it has to do with like being able to share their dreams and fantasies and fetishes. I think all my documentaries are actually trying to document uh, like the inner images of each one of those characters, their projections, their desires, what they actually dream when they go to sleep. Um, so I think, yeah, basically they attract me in their capacity to share what's inside of them, and to reimagine their lives inside a film. And yeah, to recreate and reimagine and to share with me like their those images that are inside of their minds. And I mean, the blind poet, for example, my original idea of the film was like to investigate how much of Glauco, the character, how much of him was himself, because that's not his real name. That's the name he uses for years for writing. And I wanted to understand how much of that is a character that he created for writing his poetry. And the
Mm.
film, in the first place, would be like an investigation to see who's the man behind that character. But then I realized that it doesn't matter. I mean, I just want to keep creating that idea of himself that he has been creating for years, and I just want to go like dive into his poetry world, like the images he creates, and bring that to the film, to the surface of the film.
But do you identify with the alienation of the characters or um, the outsiderness of the characters?
I think so. Yes, I think I identify myself in a way, and they also are very resilient. I think, like the
Mm.
Glauco, the blind poet. I think in the end, he's also is like a winner in the way he wants to be shown. He likes. He says that he like he overcame all the abuse he went through, and that uh, the abuse like helped him accept his blindness, and the blindness helped him accept uh, the world and the abuse itself. So I think they also have in the end like a positive a positive message, you could
Yeah,
say.
a lot of the
um,
characters were abused. Like there was, I guess it's the guy in the fellow in the flower um, of the blue flower of Novalis was also uh, raped by his brother and
yes, by his
um,
brother.
abused by his father, and
And in Nova Dubai there is a character that appears that
was gang
like
raped.
gang raped, and I don't know, I was never really like attracted to those stories particularly. I wasn't like going for them. They would just appear at everything I was doing. um, so maybe it's something of my unconsciousness that is attracting me to those topics, but maybe it has to do with our community also, how
Yeah,
just how much we are like
internalized, maybe.
yeah, how we are sensitive, how we are fragile. I mean, we are like, as children, we are like maybe perfect victims for those things to happen.
Well, I think it's very interesting the way that a lot of them then acknowledge how that kind of experience affects their sex life and their sexual identity, and but particularly how they receive and give pleasure sexually um, is very much connected to those experiences of abuse, and not necessarily in a shameful way, or
Hmm.
as a more as a way of mm, accepting or coping.
Hmm. And I just wanted to know you to know that I sent you some films that basically only the films that have explicit sex, because I figured that you wouldn't have the time to watch everything. But
Okay.
there are more films that are like maybe the double of it does not have like explicit sex. It's not. Uh, I'm also interested in other kind of uh, of stories. Also, I do. I also have like several short films that are really cute and funny and very light.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't send to you because I guess it wasn't the topic you wanted to.
So maybe can you maybe you can relate that to how the queer experience in Brazil and specifically and how that is expressed through your films. Is it more or less brutal than other places in terms of coping with that with homophobia, with the culture?
Well, it's very hard to say because, well, I know the numbers and I know that Brazil is a very violent place for the queer community, especially trans people, that we are like the country in the world that is the biggest killer of the trans community. There are a lot of trans that are killed here. And but also it has to do with several, I mean, I feel very safe, but I'm very privileged because I'm a white cis man. I guess if you are a lesbian, it's harder. If you are trans, it's harder. If you have to move through different kinds of neighborhoods to go to work or to go to study or things like that, it could be rough. But personally, I never experienced violence here. Of course, I was bullied when I was a kid at school and things like that. But at the end, if you are like an artist, you make cinema and then you travel, you show your films, you're kind of respected in a certain space that welcomes you and you feel safe. So to me, it's kind of easy for me. But I know, I mean, Brazil is actually very conservative, very religious, and now we have like this. Now we are like a majority of evangelical people in the country, and that are very, very conservative. And so, and with the years of Bolsonaro, also like the thing got worse, but now it's getting a bit better. Uh, but yeah, and for the arts, also, I think it's gotten worse with the time, like because Bolsonaro also started like to persecute artists that were talking about queerness and sexuality. He was openly like trying to cut fundings for cinema by showing uh, what kind of faggotry people were doing in cinema, like what kind of films. And then he was like, this, we cannot keep giving money to that kind of film.
Mm.
Actually, the Blue Flower of Novalis, there was one of his ministers, he called like a meeting with several producers from Brazil, very important producers were there. I wasn't there.
Bolsonaro did
One of his ministers,
ministers. Yeah.
Yeah, and that guy showed the poster of the Blue Flowers of Mavali, and he just like ripped it and said, "We cannot support this kind of cinema," and people were like, "That film is self-funded. That film does not have any kind of public funding. So what are you talking about?" So that's the level of yeah, we were kind of persecuted during the Bolsonaro years, but that has changed happily. But he can come back anytime. So,
Yeah. Well,
um,
look what's going on in Chile and Argentina, and I mean, it's it's never, it's cyclical. It seems things come back in cycles,
yeah,
oppression and
and also like in the internet, they had several tweets with my entire name and all my like my data with the number my number of my identity, the number of my
really,
documents,
they
and
published it.
saying yeah, and saying that I was the director of the S movie,
Oh my God.
and that I owned money to the government because I had received like a huge amount of money to make the film, which were all lies, of course, because that film was I made myself with my money and very little money. So those kind of things have been happening, but I hope it gets better. It already feels better now.
Yeah, well, that's good. Um, I wanted to. You said the film you made the the film one of the films during the pandemic.
I'm learning to sleep. Yeah.
What wanted to talk about Tigre Triste, which
Uh-huh.
is very much a pandemic movie. Uh,
Yes.
it was made during the pandemic.
It was also made during the pandemic,
Yeah.
but actually the project changed a lot because that's like the only film I had like official funding to make. And
Is it also the only film you've made that is completely narrative without any direct camera address or kind of like um, other kind of elements imposed onto the uh, into onto
yes,
the narrative, distancing techniques or whatever? I mean, is it more
yeah, I think it's more conventional in a way,
in a
but
way? But
in a way, yeah.
I love it.
And
It's one of my favorite.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very fun. And so the film changed a lot because we were supposed to have shot in March 2020, but then like part of the crew was coming from other parts of Brazil to shoot, and then the pandemic started, and then we had to stop everything, and we didn't know what to do. Like we just waited and waited and waited, and Bolsonaro was in the was president, and he kind of almost shut down Ancine, which is like the cinema organ that we have here, and they wouldn't like tell us what to do if we had more. They wouldn't tell us if we could have more a bigger deadline to give the film ready to them, or if they would give us like an extra budget for the safety protocols. So we were kind of lost for a year and a half, and in that year and a half I shot on learning to sleep in my apartment, just waiting to see what was going on with Tristes. And then basically I just like rewrote the whole film because the deadline to finish the film was getting close, and we decided to do the film in June 2021. And so I decided to embrace the pandemic because to me it made no sense to shoot a film during the pandemic, pretending not to be in the pandemic. So the actual script changed a lot, a lot, a lot. And then it got smaller also because it was a much bigger film with many musical moments, all the characters singing. And then I just cleaned all that up because I knew our budget would be impacted by the safety protocols, that we would need to save some money for that. And yeah, so the film was very much transformed by the pandemic.
Mm. Well, I love that it's like a picaresque of with three characters following three characters who encounter all these very interesting characters along the way, and I love how the memory, the idea of the loss of memory, which was a kind of symptom of some people who got you
COVID.
know, the virus. They had memory loss or got or brain fog or something. So that was very. I love the way that you incorporated that into the movie. But how did you find those three main characters? They were so great.
Yes, it was basically online, because I knew I wanted them to look very young. And so it was hard to find actors that were like real actors, because in this film I wanted to work only with like professional actors, because usually I work with non-actors, and I do those things. Sometimes I do something a lot and then I just decide, no, now I want to do the opposite.
Yeah,
And
I do
then
that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I decided I wanted to do only actors, so it was like searching a lot. I did several interviews and tests with several very young actors that I would find on Instagram, and they would have to have like a certain look first of all, and they would have to be like at least studying to be actors, and then I would like interview them and see basically if we were like if we had like things in common and if we were like talking the same kind of language. And then I would send them a small scene and they would send back to me, and that's basically how I got to them. The two boys are professional actors. The trans girl, it was harder because, as I told you, trans are really uh, in a bad situation in Brazil, and they give up going to school because they suffer so much violence that they give up at a very early age to study.
Oh wow,
So the girl was the only one who wasn't like an actress. Yeah.
she's great, and of course her character is trying to go to school, which
Yeah.
is yeah, um, yeah. I love that they're all kind of uh, somewhat non-binary. I mean, she is
Uh-huh.
trans, and the other two are kind of non-binary, and it's like a very it's unique to have those three kinds of characters. Well, the even though two of them, the two boys are the same age, one is the uncle of the other,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
then the trans girl, and that they don't really have any kind of sexual um, interest in each other. They're just kind of like three friends
Hmm.
on their adventure together, which I think is incredibly sweet. And it's just it's a very sweet kind of um, uh, film about very charming characters.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I was going to say that to me it was very important that the Isabella, the girl, that she was like really focused on studying on her future, and she's the only one who doesn't have like a love interest in some other character, because I just felt that usually that's where trans women uh, are usually shown as like searching for love or for, so I tried to make it like she to me was the future, looking to the future and to study and to, and then the black boy to me is the present, and he's only like responding to everything that's happening to him at the moment. And the other boy, Babyface, is the past. He's like grieving for his dead lover.
I love the scene where he's having sex with his dead lovers with his accordion,
Yes.
which is very somehow poetic and awkward at the same time. Um, so we, I think we've gotten most of what I wanted to ask you about. I just wanted to talk maybe a bit about, and we touched on this before, but in Nova Dubai, I mean, the you quite often insert yourself in your own films having sex, and quite often, um, it seems it's hard to tell what is staged and what isn't. So, for example, in the infamous scene in Nova Dubai with the where you have the three-way with the construction worker, the very hot construction worker. Um, how did that happen, and was how real was it? Is it totally
Okay.
staged? Is it totally real?
Actually, I never thought of exposing myself. Uh,
Was that the first time? Was that the first time you had sex on screen?
yes, I think it all began with the Blind Poet, because the Blind Poet, I was naked in front of the whole crew, and the crew all was like, they didn't really trust me as a director. I felt really exposed, and they were like laughing, and they, I don't know, it
Mm,
was my first short film ever, so I wasn't feeling that secure, and I felt exposed, and being exposed like naked in front of a crew that doesn't really believe in your work, it just like changed something inside me. Like I felt much stronger after that experience. Like I just felt that I could give a fuck to anything. Like I don't care anymore. Like I just felt that something
giving no
changed.
fucks.
What?
Giving no fucks.
Yeah, something changed inside me, and I was always very timid, very shy, and there I think something changed, and I started like, I don't care about anybody's opinion anymore after that, you know.
Mm.
And then when I was like starting to produce Nova Dubai, I realized that I was like inviting all my friends to have sex on camera, and that I wouldn't have like money to convince an actor to do that role, and I wouldn't also have like the time, the proper time to prepare an actor to believe, make an actor believe that that is really necessary, you know. So it was almost like a production strategy to be the actor, because I knew I didn't have the money to pay anybody else, and I knew all my friends were like, they wanted, they accepted to be on camera, and I guess they would feel like uh, safer if they felt like the director was also like exposing himself.
Yeah, I used to I started out with the same uh, rule: never ask anybody to do anything in a film or a photographer that you wouldn't do yourself. Basically,
Exactly. I think that that was the strategy I had to
yeah.
make them feel more comfortable in front of the camera, and that's how I decided to be the actor. And
And the construction worker.
yeah, that he was the only porn actor that
Oh,
we had. That he was the only one, because actually the guy who plays the father, of the friend that I fuck in the car. He was a porn director,
Oh, okay.
a, a porn. He directed porn, and he like said, "Oh, I could invite this guy that I worked with as an actor some years ago, and maybe he would accept." And that's what we did. Like he was there, but he was actually a very good actor because all the way that he describes, because first we interview them, that is something that I think that film plays a lot with the documentary language, though it's completely fictional. We are like always using some parts that look documented.
Well, you do that in a lot of your films, actually.
Yeah, because I like to make people, yeah, to blur the line and make people like wonder, oh, is this for real? Is that what I'm?
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you felt that you weren't sure, because yeah, he was a very good actor, and the way he describes the construction site, the way he tells a
Yeah.
story about he fucking a girl inside the construction site is very like very good. His imagination is so
Well,
good.
then you intercut him with other characters who seem to be real construction
Yeah,
workers.
those are real workers. Yeah, and but it also like felt very real because we were actually shooting in those places on daylight without permission to shoot, so we were always like stealing the images, so it was always very fast. And for example, that scene with the construction worker, we were like in a Sunday, the construction site was closed, and we kind of invaded, and in front of the construction site there was like a place with a guys like showcasing the the future apartment, how it would be. So we just actually parked our van in front of the guy, so the guy couldn't see the construction site. And then the assistant director was there talking to the guy, just distracting him while we were like fucking in the construction site, so nobody would notice, so things like that.
Well, I love the way also it's like they're talking about how they're, I mean, there's always proletarian proletariat characters in your film and ideas about class. You know, there's a lot of class consciousness, and that the construction workers are building this building that they would never be able to afford to live in. And then you have the sex scene with the real estate guy. Uh,
Yes.
he wasn't a porn actor.
No, the real estate the real estate guy was my husband for 8 years.
Oh, okay.
And he's the one who acts with me in Unlearning to Sleep also.
Ah, okay. Nice.
But back then we were just like starting. That was like our first year of relationship.
There's so many parallels between you and me in terms of our filmmaking and everything, because I started out the same way with, you know, um, only performing sexually in my films because I knew that I could do it myself. I wouldn't have to pay anyone, and it made everyone else more comfortable performing sex. And then I had my boyfriend at the time play the skinhead in my first movie that I have sex with. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels there. But you know, I find Nova Dubai so the character that ends up hanging himself at the end. Uh,
Uh-huh.
maybe just talk a little bit maybe about the ending of that film because it's so. I mean, it remind you mentioned Bataille, you know, in some of your work, and it seems like a
Yes.
very Bataille kind of ending, um, like because it's almost like the fulfillment of his fantasy, or his wish, you know, at the end of the film.
Yes, I think
And is that based on a real character? Or?
yes, that's he was a very close friend of mine, and he was a poet also, and I really enjoyed his poetry, and he had tried several times to suicide for real, and yeah, though it looks very sad, at the same time, it's like I think the film wants to fulfill his dream in a way, you know. So he gets what he wants. He talks about dying throughout the whole film, and then basically it's like he accomplishes it. It's almost like yeah, like the fulfillment of a desire. So of course, it's about death and there's some melancholy to it, but to me, it's like a happy ending, I think.
Yeah, that's how I read it as well. Okay, the last question. You're one of the few filmmakers who I think you have a character with HIV almost in almost all of your films, and you talk. There's a lot of people talking about the issues around HIV. How is that? Um, is that really important for you to make those characters like almost in the same way that you said um, to cut off the head and talk about the asshole, which is the an essential part of everyone that we think about every day, but no one ever represents on film. It's kind of similar to HIV that it's not represented.
Yeah, to me, it's like a very conscious choice because I think we were all very directly being gay and being in the LGBTQ community, like we were very directly affected by this virus, even if like I when I was born in 85, like I kind of had to learn all my sex life and love life, everything was through this prisma of HIV, though I never like really like suffered, like I didn't have like a friend who died or something like that, but all my sentimental education had to be aware of HIV. So I think it's something that is very important that usually we don't talk about. I think there's still a huge stigma and people don't know like the basic. They don't know that indetectable is untransmissible.
Right. I love that the hairless hamster's name is untransmissible.
Yes. And that I really like I wanted people to know that. That's why I gave that character that name. I wanted them to because people don't know nothing about PrEP.
In trade trigger trees, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. People still to this day they don't know what PrEP is. They don't know that people who have HIV and treat themselves can have sex without condoms and they will not infect the other person. That people know nothing
Yeah.
because there's so much fear and so much prejudice and so much stigma in this, and that was like a creation of the media in the 80s, and the media doesn't try like a bit to recreate that, to change that. Like to me, when they finally science finally discovered that untransmissible is indetectable is the same thing, that should be like in the cover of every newspaper, of every magazine, and that didn't happen. It's just like a short thing and like this size in a page of a newspaper, like.
Yeah.
So it's very uneven what happened in the 80s with where the disease is now. Like people don't don't know. So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me, it's a very conscious uh, decision to talk about it.
Yeah. It's weird. There was like so much denial about the disease itself, and then there was just as much denial about the cure, the the not the cure, but the cocktail
Yeah.
that that kind of started saving everyone's life and allowing them to have sex again, and
Mhm.
no one ever talked about it. That's yeah, I think that's really cool part of your work. Okay, I think that's all the time we have, but
Okay.
thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much. I loved it. Well, if you have any other question or doubts, you can send me and
Okay,
maybe.
and I'll probably ask you for some visuals as well.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thanks, Gustavo, and hopefully I'll see you in November.
Yes, I hope so.
Yay. Okay. Bye.